We're on to the next study of our end time study, and we're going to look at problems of interpretation this time. I had mentioned in our last study that we were looking at an example, that being the Exodus, but I think it'll be better to look at some of the potential problems, pitfalls that we can get trapped in, and that'll probably lead up to the next study a little bit better. Mark chapter 7, verses 1 through 7. Then the Pharisees and some of the scribes came together to him, having come from Jerusalem. Now when they saw some of his disciples eat bread with defiled, that is, with unwashed hands, they found fault. For the Pharisees and all the Jews do not eat unless they wash their hands in a special way, holding the tradition of the elders. When they come from the marketplace, they do not eat unless they wash, and there are many other things which they have received and hold, like the washing of cups, pitchers, copper vessels, and couches. Then the Pharisees and scribes asked him, "Why do your disciples not walk according to the tradition of the elders, but eat bread with unwashed hands?" He answered and said to them, "Well did Isaiah prophesy of you hypocrites, as it is written, this people honors me with their lips, but their heart is far from me, and in vain they worship me, teaching as doctrines the commandments of men." So, using this verse here could come across as, maybe being very harsh, and that's not at all my intention. Here's a verse that Jesus makes clear that the teaching of man, traditions, systems of thought, superseded, went above the clear teaching of God. Now, I think that we can do that ourselves when it comes to the study of prophecy. Earlier in our study, I referred to this book. It's debating various positions of the rapture. It's kind of hard to see in the picture, but they debate the pre-trib position, the pre-wrath position, and the post-trib position. I've put here on the screen, and this would be a problem, there are limited views of the end times. Now, understood, we want to come to a place where we get a clear understanding, and so, the goal is to have a view. But I think we can limit ourselves. So, for example, when I first became a Christian and started to study these things over 25 years ago, as concerning the rapture, there was really only three positions that were talked about: pre-trib, mid-trib, and post-trib. Well, I quickly had felt that mid-trib and post-trib would be positions where you could figure out the timing of the rapture, and so just very quickly I fell to the pre-trib position. What I've come to learn over the years is that there's a lot of other views, and other views that have some very good, valid points to them. So I guess I don't remember in reading this book, and I'm going to try to pull it out and find out if this is the case, but if they only present these three views, then they're limiting the views, and we're not leaving it open to other positions. Earlier we said we want to be humble about these things, and there's a lot of confusion, and so humility is a good position to take. And so what if it's not one of these three, but they're presenting only these three? Well, it'd be very easy to read a book about prophecy, and this could set you off for years of study about these three, when all along it was actually another position that was correct. So that is one problem. We have a limited view, and so we want to be humble and open to various views at the end of the day, it's what the scriptures that say, not the traditions, the teachings of men. We need to hold, I think we all hold to that, but we can easily fall into a state where we end up believing the traditions or the systems of men over the Bible. I think that's a real possibility. Next problem is this. You've all seen, jigsaw puzzles. This is a picture puzzle, and so you get your puzzle, dump out the pieces. You got the box top there with the picture, and so now you know where to work, and you set the borders up, and you start working your way. And so you have something very clear in your mind. We all do this with prophecy. Often we have a particular position that we hold to, maybe the timing of the rapture or who the beast is, and we have everything laid out before we really have a good grasp of all of the scriptures. Now, that obviously none of us is going to have a solid grasp of every scripture, but very early on in my Christian walk, I took a position on the rapture, on who the Antichrist was, and all that stuff. And, I didn't know a thing about Scripture. So what I was doing then was I had a box top picture that I had in my mind of the way things should fit together. And now when I read Joel, or I read Exodus, or I read 2 Thessalonians, it had to fit the picture that I had in my mind. The problem is when you get to scriptures and you got a puzzle piece and it just doesn't fit. And the truth is there's many verses like that in all the systems. There's a verse that just doesn't seem like it fits together. So this is a problem as well. Sort of having it all mapped out in our minds and then taking that picture that we have to the scriptures. Now, another problem that I see is this here. And there's laws that we create. I just read I guess it was almost 50-page paper about the law of the near and far fulfillment of prophecy. And the idea is basically this, that if there's a prophecy in the Old Testament, I have this cursor here, and let's say you're a person and you're not as high as this wave, you're maybe only this high. Well, at your time, when there was a prophecy made, all you would see is the prophecy in front of you, sort of this mound. But there's the near and the far fulfillment of prophecy. So it might have been a prophecy that was stated back then, but it would be fulfilled over here way in the future with Christ. There's the near and the far. Now, that's a good concept, I think. I mean, it's helpful. But it's limited once again, because as we're studying about prophecy being cycles, what about in between? What if really this sine wave goes up and down and up and down, and that would be a modulated wave? There's all kinds of ups and downs, crests along the way, and until you get to that ultimate fulfillment. So this is again a limited view, and the truth is I don't know if there's anything in the Bible that says there's the principle or the law of the near and far. So we need to be careful of this as well. I read that paper, and again, 50, 60 pages. It wasn't until page 18 that they even brought up a scripture. So now, look, I've kind of done the same thing before. I gave you that, you could say gobbledygook about the views of time with the cyclical and the linear and I'm talking about fractals and hey, I need to fall in the same category. It's the word of the Lord that matters. The near and the far principle would be wonderful if the scriptures bear that out. Now we'll see when we get to our example that actually is a problem, and that's why I wanted to do this first, because in the Exodus account that we'll look at. Well, when we get there, you'll see that this is a limited view, so we sort of need to be careful. Okay, so going back to this, putting some puzzle pieces together in our studies, and we're thinking about problems that we might have. Here's some recommendations. We pour out the puzzle pieces and start reading our Bibles, and let's get rid of the picture on the box. Let's just get rid of it. and not have any preconceived ideas and have to be locked into anything, and let the scripture start building. We get in there, we study verse by verse, chapter by chapter, as hard as we can, understanding it all. We understand that on top of this, there is that cyclical nature of prophecy. As we work our way through time, there's going to be things that are repeated over and over throughout the Bible. There is the fractal idea, so that the story of God is in every chapter, every sentence, every word, and so forth. It's pregnant with truth. The whole Bible, with the near and the far, you wouldn't be looking in between for the fulfillment of a prophecy. You'd have to wait all the way to the end. But what we're saying here is that, no, this stuff gets repeated over and over again, and it's a story that you could see, and every bit is important. And so then, with these things in mind, having this humble, confident attitude, not having a picture before us, and just approaching the scriptures, and we'll just allow the Lord to bring the pieces together in a beautiful time. And He will, as things are unveiled to us, it'll become very clear, and He'll fit the pieces together. And I have to think that as they do come together, it's going to be a really, really wonderful and good thing for us. So that's just a little bit of discussion about some of the problems, and some thoughts about maybe, some suggestions about how we could approach it. And next time we will, Lord willing, get to the example of the Exodus.